Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Trade Coffee. Blue Beetle, the third of 4 big DC movies releasing in 2023, is easily their best of the year so far. Now, I know what you may be thinking, isn't that like a pretty low bar? And you're not wrong. I really did dislike both Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Flash, and the fact that Blue Beetle manages to top both of them isn't all that notable, honestly. But I do think this movie does some things really well, and has one of the more likable ensembles introduced in a superhero film in a really long time. Both the negative and positives of this one are well worth discussing. Real quick though, I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing of mentioning that only 11% of my subscribers have hit that almighty bell, and in an era where YouTube pushes shorts over regular videos constantly, I definitely appreciate it. But enough of that, let's get into this review, and there will be spoilers.
The Scarab advises me. Think Jiminy Cricket, with a really bad attitude.
Going into Blue Beetle, I have to admit that I wasn't super familiar with this take on the character. I mostly know Blue Beetle from his Charlton Comics Golden Age title, and probably most memorably in the Justice League International title from the late 80s, where the Ted Kord version of the character proved to be a really great comedic foil for Booster Gold. I appreciated the character, but I was never all that driven to check out his post-New 52 stuff. So while I knew Blue Beetle a bit, I didn't know Jamie Reyes very well at all. This was my first real introduction, and I gotta say, it was a good one. Xolo Maridueña, who I was familiar with from Cobra Kai and NBC's Parenthood, turns out to be ideal casting for a young superhero here. There's nothing super complex about the character, but he makes the basic and streamlined hero's journey beats work and work well. It's a really likable performance, and I hope to see the actor turn up in a lot more movies. Really, the entire family is very well cast. I was a little wary of George Lopez's performance at first, because he goes very over the top early on. I'll talk about that transformation scene in a minute, but in the end he really won me over as the wacky inventor uncle who is given a few really nice reflective moments of characterization amid the chaos. So yeah, if the idea of seeing a fun, lighthearted superhero film is still appealing to you, I'm happy to say that Blue Beetle will probably do the trick. If you're expecting it to go really far above the usual beats of a superhero origin story, you're not gonna find it here. I like that Blue Beetle leans into the family dynamics of its characters and their world so much, because aside from that, there's very little unique on offer here. The screenplay hits all the expected moments of an origin story, and I really do mean all of them. On the actual superheroing side of things, almost everything feels directly lifted from a different superhero movie. Like, did you enjoy Peter trying to use his webs for the first time in the first Raimi movie? Well, you're in luck, because they kinda just speedrun that scene here. Iron Man is also another really obvious touchstone. In fact, I would say I was kinda disappointed by how much like the Iron Man suit the Scarab ended up being. As I said, I haven't read the New 52 version of the character, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was really faithful to it, but having such an ancient alien artifact basically work like 21st century tech, complete with the exact same kind of in-suit assistant that Iron Man or MCU Spider-Man has, just doesn't seem like the most exciting choice. Like, why not aim for something a little more out there and strange? Most of the time, he may as well have had Siri in the suit. That being said, the superpowers are a lot of fun, and I wish they hadn't given away that bus being sliced in half in the trailer, because I did really enjoy that scene. The discovery of the power scenes are, again, far from original, but honestly at this point they kind of felt like a breath of fresh air, getting the genre back to the core of its appeal in a time where multiverses and complex timelines have become the norm. Blue Beetle is happy to embrace the classic superhero movie formula. I probably would have found this pretty annoying back in 2015 or so, but I found myself enjoying how much of a 2000s throwback that the movie ended up feeling. If this kind of narrative is something you're completely over, or you never really liked it in the first place, I doubt Blue Beetle will bring much to the table to change your mind. So I should probably talk about the villains a bit. This Susan Sarandon character, I mean, what can you even say? Sarandon is a total pro and does her best with the material, but there's nothing to this role. She's pure condescending evil with zero redeeming qualities. And that's fine in a superhero villain. They don't all have to have some deep inner conflict, but I would have appreciated just something more interesting here. Her strange, sad relationship with Carapax had a lot of potential and a lot of avenues that they could have explored, but unfortunately, almost all of that gets unpacked really quickly right before her death, leaving Victoria Cord feeling like a pretty boring character with quite a bit of placeholder villain type dialogue. Carapax himself, I think, comes off a lot better, and the actor brings a lot of really effective silent menace to the role. I'll admit I groaned a little when he was yelling, "Your love for your family makes you weak," because the fact that that was going to get turned around on him in the third act was just so cliche and inevitable. And you know what? It was, but at least his climactic death and the flashbacks that went with it recontextualized that line in a far more interesting way, which made me forgive the unsubtle clunkiness of that line a bit. I've seen some people have a big problem with the family basically mowing down soldiers at the end, but it was all such over-the-top, pulpy fun that I didn't really mind that stuff much. Aside from the father's death, which is obviously a very superhero origin story type thing, the film is pretty committed to being lighthearted. I think the Scarab transformation scene is a really funny example of that, because with just a few different editing choices, this could play like a Evil Dead Rise scene. A whole family looking on shocked, witnessing this grotesque body horror being visited upon their son, which, is not exactly the vibe they're looking for, so they keep cutting to George Lopez doing some very broad sitcom screaming to make it more of a fun ride and less of an exorcism movie. Some of the comedy landed for me, some of it didn't, but I definitely know that if I had watched this at 11 years old, I would have been blown away and found the whole thing hilarious. That may sound like a backhanded compliment, but I don't really mean it to be. This would be a great first superhero story for a kid, and I think there's a lot of value in that. That's not to say that the movie doesn't have anything on its mind, because it clearly does, as it really doubles down on highlighting the class and race divide in Palmyra City. And though there's zero subtlety, it does a really great job of defining this family and Blue Beetle himself as lovable underdogs that you really want to root for. With this emphasis on the class division in the city though, and the Cord Company, I did think they resolved everything way too simply. Like, this giant capital E evil weapons manufacturer is reformed instantly because Jenny, and not Sarandon's Saturday morning cartoon villain, is now in charge. Not only does that really feel like an Iron Man retread, but a lot less satisfying because we know Tony Stark's internal struggles far more than Jenny's, I think it's also a bit of a cop-out. If you're going to try to bring that social commentary to the table and really underline it, I think you should at least stick to your guns and have a resolution that's more morally complex and grounded than the giant corporation is good because a nice person is in charge now. It's the kind of trite and safe ending that I don't think this movie needed to settle for. Still, I did enjoy Blue Beetle. It didn't blow me away or do anything all that surprising, but it did the meat and potatoes of these kind of stories well. It had a cast that I'd happily watch continue on into the future, and even though the movie isn't doing great at the box office right now, I do hope they stick around. In its finest moments, Blue Beetle's back-to-basics approach reminded me why I liked any of this stuff in the first place. And while I would like to eventually see this character in a more ambitious story, I did genuinely appreciate that. Variety is so important, but so often with our morning coffee, we settle for the same old stuff. Thankfully, we don't have to anymore. Trade is a coffee service that makes it simple to discover new coffee from over 55 top indie roasters, enabling you to make your best cup of coffee at home every day. Whatever your taste happens to be, Trade curates it just for you. I have their red bag showing up at my door all the time, and I'm constantly able to try new brands. Lately, I've been having Peixoto Doce, which is so good. It's smooth and just a little bit chocolatey, easily one of my favorites so far. And Trade is just super easy to deal with. They have free shipping, anytime cancellations, fully customizable plans, just totally hassle-free. So upgrade your morning routine with better coffee. Right now, Trade is offering my viewers a free bag with any subscription at drinktrade.com/captainmidnight. That's drinktrade.com/captainmidnight for a free bag of coffee with any subscription purchase. drinktrade.com/captainmidnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.